Good afternoon. Bob Tuskin filling in for John Stadmiller today, and we will start off with John's regular guest, Gerald Celente, the TrendsJournal, of course, his blockbuster. And without further ado, we'll bring Gerald on. Gerald, how are you today?
Oh, very good. Thanks for having me on, Bob.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on with us. And there's definitely a lot going on as far as geopolitically. We have the war with Syria heating up. What would that do to us economically, Gerald? Because we'd have to imagine that it will have its toll on the economy.
Here's what first of all, for the subscribers to the TrendsJournal, we've been writing about this for over 2 years in detail, how they were setting us up, all of the false flags that they were putting out there. Matter of fact, Bob, the top trend from our TrendsJournal for 2013 is war. Now remember, we wrote that back in December for the coming year. And we began it with what's going on in Syria and how they were talking about this whole chemical weapons thing. You know, they had them ready to launch. They could go off any moment. And just the hysteria. And of course, you know, that old famous saying, you tell a lie often enough and the people believe it. And people don't look in between the lines. They just read the headline. And from what most people believe is that Syria is using chemical weapons. But I just want to make a point with that. Let us suppose they are. So, I mean, didn't the Egyptian military, and of course they still don't call it a coup in the United States, didn't they just kill over 1,000 people in the last week and a half? Now that's different. They killed them with guns. Okay.
I was going to say, it's not chemical weapons.
Yeah, so I mean, you're dead. And then you want to talk about hypocrisy? Hey, how about that lovely Agent Orange? You remember that, don't you? That poisoned Vietnam and our American soldiers as well. And how about the atom bomb? Wasn't that a beaut? Nagasaki, Hiroshima. Oh, and how about all of that white phosphorus that they just covered Fallujah with and other parts of Iraq? But don't use any chemical weapons that aren't graded by the U.S. FDA. I mean, come on with this stuff. I mean, they're killing people. They're massacring. There's an estimated 1 million people were killed by the so-called coalition of the willing in Iraq. And so you're dead. That's number one. Number two, the Syrians are warning, and this goes back to answer your question about the economy. They're warning. And by the way, as trend forecasters, we're only interested in information, and we know it's skewed from wherever it comes from. So we look at it all over the world. So, for example, we read what's coming out of the Israeli press, for example, Haaretz. We look at Al Jazeera, understanding that Al Jazeera's press is owned by the Qatar government, which is the major player that's supplying the so-called rebels with their armaments. We read that. And we also read the FARS, F-A-R-S, news agency out of Iran.
Iran, right.
So we want to get all of the information. So what we're getting, the feedback we're getting, is Assad is saying there's going to be a counterattack. We're going to counterattack. So my thinking in this at this point is, first of all, two things. Number one, they know when you are sleeping. That's one of the trend forecasting phrases I always use. For example, President Obama signed a National Defense Authorization Act that robs us of all our habeas corpus rights, plus other rights, allows to repeal the Posse Comitatus Act that allows the military now to do police duties on New Year's Eve when no one was watching. So if they do a military strike over the Labor Day weekend, most people won't be aware of it and will only get the headline from it, and they'll swallow the headline. Secondly, if there's a counterattack, to me, this is the perfect setup, because then they could give an excuse for robbing us of more of our constitutional rights. It just came out today that under the Snowden releases, they're spending $53 billion of our money watching us. And, of course, we're not allowed to see where that money's being spent because, after all, it's only our money, and they know better than we do. We're just a bunch of stupid morons who should give them our money so they could do with it what they like. So I believe there's going to be a counter-strike if there is a strike. And if that happens, it goes back to your question about the economy. They closed down 100 square miles of Boston, the Boston Marathon bombing, to look for a 19-year-old kid. Imagine if a dirty bomb went off in D.C., or there was biological warfare in New York City. Suppose there was a real 9/11 magnitude. Again, whether you believe in it or not, I'm not quantifying it. I'm just saying this incident happened on that day, on 9/11. Just imagine what it will do to the financial institutions. It'll crash the economy.
Right. And Gerald, there's talk of a technological 9/11, and I even heard that there's some thought that Syrian hackers might have been to blame. We saw that hiccup with the stock market a couple of weeks ago now, where the stock market all of a sudden had a technical glitch. Do you think that might be the way in which this is ushered in?
Yes, that could be one of them, as you mentioned with the NASDAQ. And, they screwed up the entire market, closed down the New York Times got hacked. Right. This is real stuff. There's a saying as a kid, grew up in the Bronx, payback's a bitch.
Right.
Who's putting it in these psychopaths' minds that you can attack somebody and they can't attack you back? So this is very serious. Now, just to replay something, on 9/11, I tried to get my money out of the banks. I had it in certificates of deposit because I live north of New York City, and I know I'm a New Yorker. In case you can't tell by my accent, and I remember when they built the Indian Point nuclear power plant, and according to the reports that were coming in, planes were coming down the Hudson River. So if the World Trade Center toppled, and whatever happened at the Pentagon happened, I'm saying to myself, man, if they whack nuclear power plant, you're going to see chaos like you've never seen in your life. So I was ready to get out of here as everybody was going, running in fear. I had my getaway plan, guns, gold, and a getaway plan, GC's 3Gs, Gerald Celente's 3Gs. And so the first thing after I called my girlfriend at the time to get over here, get your money out of the bank, and she had a tough time getting it out of the key bank. She was French, and they started giving her, crap because, these French never support us in this time of need. And her being French, she got her money. And then when she got back, I called up Fleet Bank, and Fleet Bank's no longer there. And I told them I wanted to cash out my CDs and send them to the money to my Rhinebeck Bank, and had all the transfer, information, because, I do this, international business.
Sure, what they tell you.
Stuff. I'm sorry, Mr. Celente, you can't get those. Certificates of deposit are financial instruments that are traded on Wall Street, and Wall Street's closed.
What do you mean? It's my money. This is my Federal Reserve notes here. Gerald Celente is with us. Bob Tuskin filling in for John Stadmiller. When we come back, we'll continue on that note and so much more. Trends forecast, ladies and gentlemen, things are heating up.
Ceramic body armor is rated to stop 6 hits. But what about the 7th? Unlike ceramic or Kevlar, Infidel body armor is proven to take hit after hit, and it just won't quit. Reasonably priced and designed for the smart civilian prepper, Infidel stops hundreds of hits from small arms to high-powered rifles. That means safety and peace of mind. Buy yours at InfidelBodyArmor.com. Spelled INFIDEL bodyarmor.com. Infidel body armor just won't quit. The government's Department of Homeland Security is buying up loads of ammo. At the same time, they're restricting civilians' rights to own and purchase firearms. Can you put 2 and 2 together? Infidel body armor can stop every round, including hollow points and .308 sniper rounds. Is reasonably priced and fully legal. But for how long? Go to InfidelBodyArmor.com. Spelled INFIDEL bodyarmor.com. Infidel Body Armor just won't quit.
Golden Stag Safaris invites you to hunt in one of Argentina's most beautiful scenarios. Enjoy the quietness of the Pampas and the 5-star accommodation lodge. Excellent food and wine included in your stay, all the while hunting big game in the Argentine Valley. an area known for having a wide range of game, excellent trophies, the biggest stags in South America, as well as many other species. All gold medal quality. One-on-one guided hunts, rental guns available with the highest quality scopes in every caliber, Land Rovers for transport, pick up at Buenos Aires Airport, and a private aircraft for charter is all available. Go to www.goldenstagsafaris.com to see photos and for more information. Again, www.goldenstagsafaris.com.
With financial uncertainty circling the globe due to job losses, decline in the housing market, a climate of corruption, bailouts, currency rigging, and unfair competition, many are once more turning to precious metals as the only hedge against the uncertainty of the future. With the U.S. House conducting hearings on proposals to confiscate workers' personal retirement accounts, including 401ks and IRAs, this is the time to secure your assets. Call Republic Trading Group today, 800-691-7898, before this happens, and find out how easy it is to convert your existing IRA and in some instances your 401k plan into real wealth now. Don't let the ravages of hyperinflation caused by the massive increase of fiat currency now flooding world markets affect your retirement account. Call RTG at 800-691-7898 and experience the security and peace of mind that only real gold and silver can offer. That number again is 800-691-7898. Call now.
Get ready for Real Talk Radio. You're listening to the National Intel Report with your host, John Stadtmiller.
All right, so Gerald Celente is with us, Bob Tuskin filling in for John Stadtmiller. And Gerald, you were telling us what happened when you tried to get your money out of the bank shortly after 9/11. They basically told you couldn't do so. What was your reaction?
Oh, just was your reaction exactly what you just said. And before we went off, I said, what are you kidding me? Watch my money. And then, I also got caught up in the MF Global scandal. They stole my money out of a segregated account. So the message of the story, Bob, is if you don't have your money, it's not your money. And all the people have to do is see what happened in Cyprus. So if there is blowback, as they like to call it, or revenge, or payback, or the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, another thing that could happen is they could close the banks, state of emergency, because of these terrorists and that will give the government the excuse to then devaluate the currency, just as they did when they closed the banks in 1933, when they forced people to turn in their gold. And gold, you could buy an ounce of gold in those days. I always get the number a little mixed up. It was around $20.62 an ounce. And then after they got confiscated all the gold, they repegged the price, and of course in those days the dollar was pegged to gold, to $35 an ounce, which meant that you lost essentially 70% of your purchasing power. And most people, of course, don't know that. And I think that's the kind of scam that we'll see as a result of this atrocity that the country is being led into by our psychopaths in chief.
Yep. It's very possible. You mentioned what happened in Cyprus. We also saw in the United States, probably a year or so after that, if not less, what bank was it? It was one of the major banks where people logged into their accounts online, as many people do these days. Everything's on the internet, and they saw a zero on their balance statement, and they were told it was a glitch, but many wondered whether or not that was testing people's reactions to this.
Well, again, it's like you said, it could be anything. And so that's what I fear about the war. And again, that's the main trend, the top trend that we identified for 2013. And as I wrote back in 2008 when the financial systems were collapsing, I said when all else fails, they'll take you to war. I mean, this, I have to tell you what aggravates me so much are these hypocrite liberals, these Obama apologists. When Bush was doing this with Iraq, they were screaming bloody murder. And now they have lockjaw, and worse than that, they're even supporting it. Well, he's killing his people with nerve gas, I tell you. just disgusting, the hypocrisy. And there's a wonderful line, whether it's Jesus, Muhammad, or Buddha, the Quran, or the Bible, there is no salvation for the hypocrite. And boy, do we have them out there.
That's exactly right. They're hypocrites. And people should see beyond the left-right paradigm by now. But they're so controlled by the propaganda in the media. They're so distracted, whether it's by Trayvon Martin or most recently, I hate to even bring up her name, but Miley Cyrus. People are totally distracted. And Gerald, you can't blame them to a certain extent, although we can blame them. But, they go and they work their 9 to 5s, and they come home and they try to, eat a meal, and they don't have time to think because everyone's just over broke with their jobs.
What 9 to 5?
Yeah,
that's the old days. Who ever heard of getting up at 5:30 in the morning? And now everybody, so many people do it. Just by the way, here at the TrendsJournal, we begin our day at 10 in the morning, and we work to 6 at night. And I want to have a civilized atmosphere.
I want to ask you about Syria. Somebody who is a bit of a novice asked me, they said, Bob, what's going on with Syria? Why do you think we really are going to set up a conflict? And we know the underlying influence with war and our economy. But they asked me, they said, Bob, does Syria play ball with the IMF? Does Syria have a central bank? Gerald, let me ask you that same question I was asked.
Well, of course,
is there something to that?
There is, but there was also, to me, the big one, it's Iran. Iran is their ally.
Right. Yeah, they're a satellite state, essentially.
Yeah, and the real mission is Syria first, Iran next. And anybody that thinks the United States or Israel or anybody's going to take out Iran is out of their mind. These are the Persians. They're 70 million plus strong. This is a highly educated society. These aren't you're fighting a real army, not an Assad level army or a Hussein level. This is for real. And the second thing is that Syria is the only place where the Chinese and the Russians have ports in the Mediterranean. As a matter of fact, Russia's sending ships out now as we speak, as this conflict is heating up, into the Syrian ports and into the Mediterranean. So that, to me, is the real issue. It's Iran. Iran's on the radar.
And then beyond that, you mentioned Russia and China. How much of an influence do they play in all of this? And is it possible that we're going to see essentially World War III as a result of going into Syria? Is that going to be the first of the domino effect?
Yes. I don't know if it's going to be the major Axis and Allies type of powers. In 2000, I was down in VMI, Virginia Military Institute. They brought me down to speak of New Millennium Warfare. I'd just written Trends 2000 a few years earlier. As a matter of fact, General Anthony Zinni, who was the head of the Marines, was down there as well. We became, pen pals after that. And I was the keynote speaker. He was on the panel afterwards. And I talked about what New Millennium Warfare would look like and what World War III would look like. And you know that saying, Bob, that generals keep fighting the last war. This isn't going to be about F-35s or these ships and carriers. It's going to be about suitcase-sized nukes, dirty bombs. It's going to be a real war of terror. And you could do it now. You don't have to fight these wars like you used to. And that's the way I see World War III, an ongoing, endless battle that kills millions in different sweeps and that keeps flaring up and dying down, but a constant state of war. If we the people continue to let our leaders take us there. And I'm listening to Obama's words on NPR last night, and he said, I haven't decided. What do you mean you haven't decided? Who anointed this guy king?
Well, somebody's decided for him. He's not the decision maker, in my opinion, at the end of the day. He's just a suit.
Well, again, it was the same thing with Bush. He called himself the decider-in-chief. But whatever happened to the Constitution? Whatever happened to Congress? And one of my essential push for change is let we the people vote. You want to go to war? Let the people vote. Because the senator's son and the congresswoman's daughters don't go fight the battles. We do.
They don't
Burden
even get to
falls
choose
on
anymore. The Senate doesn't even choose anymore.
I know.
Now with the idea that the president has executive order privileges, they don't even choose anymore. So it's one big farce. The whole political system is rigged in a sense for the benefit of the military-industrial complex, whatever that is or isn't these days, so on and so forth. Gerald, in the final moments, give me some solutions. You know, with the TrendsJournal, we have a lot of fear, and a lot of, not fear, but a lot of, factual stuff that we need to be wary of. But at the end of the day, what are the solutions? Because guys like me, we want to do something about this. We don't want to just sit here and bitch. We want to do something about it. So what, in your eyes, can we do?
Here's my personal belief. It's when everybody gets in shape, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, you rise to higher levels, and you come up with new thoughts and new ideas. And when the individual changes, everything changes. And to me, that's the beginning. There's no magic answer. It's the individual. It's courage, dignity, respect, passion, integrity, and the belief that there's nobody that should tell you how to think, and you need to think for yourself.
Okay, Gerald, we'll leave it with that. Thank you again for your reports. Everybody get a copy of the TrendsJournal.
K47 is known.